board for the daycare aspect of it. You know, any type or form of what is defined as kenneling requires that. Just to, you know, be upfront with everyone and take the issue off the table. This is a daytime, Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. dog daycare. It is not, we're not looking for a kenneling permit. We're not looking to work on weekends, be open on weekends. So that is not an aspect of what is, you know, before you today. It's just a daycare scenario. Again, Monday through Friday only, 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. They're looking for to be allowed to have 50 dogs. One of the issues that I think there was some misunderstanding or misconceptions from the last time. I may have contributed to it or not, I don't know, but one of the most important things I think to set everyone straight, maybe answer some questions, because I looked at the minutes, I looked at the comments that and the what was submitted by the abutters and some of their concerns. So if I may,
Please do.
the main aspect, or from what I heard, was a concern about, you know, noise, dogs barking, and so forth. So you see outlined in green is the building that's proposed to be built there. And then in pink is the outdoor fenced-in pen. So my clients are only seeking to have the right to bring 10 dogs out at a time, regardless of number of employees, regardless of number of dogs on site. The maximum number of dogs that will be outside at any one time is going to be 10. They're going to be supervised the entire time by an employee. They're not going to be just left out into the pen and the employee walks away. So if a dog becomes unruly, they contact another employee in the building. They'll have a walkie-talkie type of setup. Come here, we need to bring this dog back in. I think it was thought, and the reason I really want to address it, that the entire backyard area of the premises would be for the use of the dogs to exercise or run around. That is not the case. It is totally restricted just by that 60 by 30, 10 dogs at a time. That's it. All right.
Can I interrupt you, Clint?
Sure.
What is the applicant's intent for fencing around that? Is it open chain link? Is it?
The outdoor pen, fine,
Okay.
similar to what surrounds the property as it exists now. And it's it will be covered, obviously, to, you know, help out the dogs on days like we're having now, to give shade when they're outside. So that's one of the things that I noted in the comments from the abutters. I think obviously the comments that and the discussion that we had at our last meeting, which was primarily focused on, you know, the noise that would potentially affect everyone. Again, you know, this is a B1 zone parcel. There is a multitude of other possibilities of development which don't require any input from your board. You know, it's just the kenneling aspect does require it for what we're seeking. It's not going to just remain vacant, obviously, but as a grass plot. It will be developed. It's consistent with what is in that area, I would say at the moment. You have, you know, Mr. Fence, you have Taylor Rental, you have the Land Rover repair and dealership. You have 2 restaurants, you have a hair salon, you know, the pool company, the gun armament, you know, company. I don't know what's going to happen. Rest in peace, David Brown, but David Brown's, you know, trucking company, you know, operated in the backyard of Pam's Diner. You know, he owned that property. Don't know what's gonna happen now that he's passed, but, so it's not, all that different from what you have there. The amount of traffic in and out, it is not all that different from what you're seeing going in and out of the restaurants. You have, if anyone here drives by frequently, as I do, Mr. Fence has an 18-wheeler, usually at least several times a week, that turns around and backs up and blocks 140 entirely, to deliver product there. You see, the contractors pulling into Taylor Rental constantly and so forth. So, I don't expect that the morning and afternoon pickups and drop-offs will be all that, different from people visiting the restaurants. There is obviously, some of the opposition comments. I came to the town hall to get copies of what was submitted, and, I'm sure your board, each one of you, has gone through that too. My only comment is some of it is inaccurate, I would say. There are notations of various other, companies or businesses like this, in which they say that, they're not near homes, but, through the woods, my client did the GIS mapping and, straight line, distancing, Camp Bow Wow, they say not near homes. The nearest home is 0.18 miles. The Butters House in Milford, they say that it's not near homes. It's right next to a residential home. It's 0.02 miles. There is a Countryside Kennels in Rentham that, isn't mentioned on their list, but it's a vet and kennel. It's probably the, closest thing to what, is being proposed here, although there's no vet practice. It's 0.03 and 0.05 miles from homes. There was a letter in opposition that was filed by, Shadia Velez. I think everyone knows, Shadia probably in town. She has the bridal, shop, in the center. I know the family quite well as well. I would just like to point out that, Shadia lived in this neighborhood until 2018. She hasn't lived here for 6 years. She lives in Franklin now. She does have her business, in the center plaza, that her father owns. But I'd also like to point out that, it wasn't that long ago, your board approved, a similar permit for the Paws Off Leash, which was much closer to her location than this is, probably about 3 times closer. And there was no opposition to that one. She was not opposed to that. So I'm of the opinion, I don't have anything to back it up, obviously, but I'm of the opinion that as she used to live there, she probably still knows a lot of the residents and was asked to submit something on their behalf. But again, I would ask that, given the fact that, she hasn't been there for 6 years and is not a resident, and, this really doesn't affect her business whatsoever, I would ask that you, disregard that letter. Their comments, again, seem to look at the noise primarily, and, they're talking about, the number of dogs, and then, one is, it says there could be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 dogs outside. Obviously, I think we've addressed that. That certainly would be a condition on your approval. It's identical to the condition actually that you put on the prior approval back, at the end of 2023 on the Paws on Leash. You, put a 10-dog limit outside on that one, and I'd like to just point out that the Paws on Leash proposal was a much smaller facility. than what is, my client is building. The outside area was a much smaller outside area. It was on paved, parking lot. Not what, my client is, going to be doing. This is gonna be a facility. It's being built specifically for this purpose. So it's, it's not a former car wash or limousine, rental office. They have all of the other stuff in place that we addressed, which, quite frankly, I don't think, we need to go back over, the cleaning routine, the trash, the chemicals to clean up and how often it will be cleaned. All of the issues like that, quite frankly, even the noise issue, I view it as more of a, if there are issues, those are enforcement issues. If there's claims that there's an odor coming from the property after, it's in operation, complaints can be made. The town officials can go down. They can do spot inspections. They can enforce all of the existing bylaws in town. They can enforce a noise bylaw if there's allegations that the barking is excessive. My clients have been in discussions with various, officials. I don't know if the animal control officers are present, via Zoom or not. It's my understanding that after our last hearing, one of the animal control officers, Patrick, went to Camp Bow Wow, just out of curiosity, parked in the J. Bryan Day parking lot right next door, and sat outside to, he was curious how loud it would get. And he sat out there for a period of time, and he states that he heard one bark. And Camp Bow Wow has probably 3 times the number of dogs as what we're proposing. And as I said, one of the most important things I think, to understand is my client's commitment to being a good business owner. One, it will allow them to grow their business and be successful. Two, they, for the last 4 years, they've owned this property ever since tearing down the dilapidated house. They go and they routinely go and maintain that property. They don't have to mow it, every time the grass gets a little high, but they do. I mean, they could let it go a little bit. It's not their, their lawn at their home. But they're trying to be, and they've always tried to be good neighbors. So in their instance, you're gonna have 10 dogs supervised by someone at all times. And with the, also one of the aspects that they will be having is temperament testing. If there are dogs that just do not meet the criteria of being able to get along in that setting with other dogs, and there are some like that, they will not be allowed to return. If there is a dog that creates a problem, it won't be allowed to come back. It's as simple as that. No one's going to leave their dog in a scenario if, where another dog could be attacking it or doing something to it. They want their dog to feel safe where they leave it, which is what my client's goal is. Lastly, one of the things stated at the end of the meeting was, the board wanted to be able to, just drive by or site visit. I don't know. I'm hoping each one of you was able to at least drive by, if not, stop and go onto the property. I just drove by it again. I do it every day, several times a day, but if you drive by right now, obviously it's the middle of summer, but you can't see anything behind that property. You can't even see the town's sewer pumping station, which is the closest structure to the property. The trees are completely, grown in. They're mature trees. There's nothing that you can see. And then one of the numbers that was discussed, I just want to again make light of, is when people were thinking that the dogs might be, all over the backyard, they were talking about how close they could possibly be to the closest condo. If you look at that that plan that each of you should already have to some degree shows that the corner of the building is 266 feet away from the closest condo. And then the way those condos are set up, each one is successively further and further away. From the pen is 30 feet deep. So from the far corner of the pen, it's 236 feet is the closest condo.
There's a building in between that too, right?
And there's the sewer pumping station in between. And obviously all of the trees that exist there.
I actually didn't know what that building was, to be honest with you.
Oh,
At first I thought it was a main school.
no,
Before you go, well, so we did last this meeting. What was our, what was our punch list?
I believe it was to first take a look at the site. That was the one item. And then I think it was discussed taking a look at some of the other dog kennel permits that have been approved in town, seeing some conditions that were made. So I can go over some of that. I know I have some photos too from the site this morning. If anybody wants to see it, I can pull them up. Yeah, I went a month ago.
Something we all did.
Walked around there.
Around, yeah.
Did you go through both locations?
Yeah, I walked around.
There's another entrance up off of.
There was also supposed to be a lookup of any complaints on any similar sizes. There was another,
Other kennels.
yeah.
I think that's what,
There's
Rob-
no complaints though,
Rob was gonna apply with the animal control.
yeah.
Yeah, I think, wasn't that discussed at the last meeting? I thought.
I didn't think they did.
If I can chime in, it was.
Thanks, Patrick.
This is Patrick, sorry. The one that you wanted me to look at was Cranberry Meadow,
Yeah.
near Hiawatha. Speak with Tracy, there was no complaints made on that facility. And as the gentleman said, just because I didn't want to, speak out of place about what I've witnessed and what I haven't witnessed. I went to CrossFit Tri-County, their parking lot. I went all the way to the back of Stonehenge. As he suggested, I went to J. Brian Day. I heard a faint bark, and then I stood in front of Camp Bow Wow. I asked Jamie and Sarah, who are two of the managers there, to get the dogs outside, and if I hear something, I can mark it down. My dog even goes there part-time. And again, the only thing I heard was one faint bark. So as far as the other facilities in our area, I've not received a complaint. Besides, like a dog bite here and there, that it happens when dogs play. That's about the only complaint.
Thanks, sir.
Thank
You're welcome.
Patrick.
And then
So what do you got for us, sir?
these are some photos from actually this morning, where this is taken. There's like a 10 or 15 foot width hedgerow that's basically between the sewer pump station, which is this building, and the nearest condo. I'm standing in front of that hedgerow, so that's looking towards the site. This is that rear fence that is along the back of the property line. That's just the building that we're talking about. This is a closer look at the back corner of the site with all the trees that are on the applicant side of the fence. And then from the front of, or this is the side of the access road going to the condominium association. So this is the right-hand side, the fence and trees along the side property line. This is from the front of the site looking back, so the white vinyl fence along the back of the property line with all the mature trees along the rear as well. A little bit of a closer look, which it is very difficult to see that building behind there when these are in full of leaves. And then just another picture of the rear of the site. So these are just to show. Okay, I think everybody already went to look at the site. Just wanted to share these. Now, as far as other approvals go, I'm going to stop sharing this, but I looked through the decisions we have, which really the filing system, it's a little bit difficult as you go further and further back just because of the record keeping. But I did pull out a few decisions. There's not a lot of commercial animal kennel licenses that were submitted or approved, I should say. The one that I found was 17 North Main Street. And that one, that was a 35 dog max kennel and then 10 dogs allowed in the outdoor area. There was a couple conditions in there about nuisance with noise, and building commissioner can basically enforce some type of I guess.
Were there any restrictions of, hours that dogs would be allowed outside?
I'll pull it up right now, actually.
Because as I'm sitting here listening to Mr. Ambler of hours of operation, if we were to make a decision on this, 6:30 is outside of our noise ordinance bylaw.
That was a point that I had not made, that I realized once Mr. Lucier started speaking. So my client has stated, you know, to me, and I thought it was stated the first time around, if it hadn't been, the earliest a dog would be let outside would be 8:30 AM. And all dogs, the latest, the dogs would be brought back in no later than 4:30 PM. Obviously, to get ready for the pickups.
Yes, I think I knew it was.
Yeah, we would not be having dogs outside at 6:30, no.
And I don't see any, I don't see any business hours in the decision for. Do you want me to pull it up actually? Would that be helpful for everybody? I don't
It
know.
was what, 2-3 years ago?
This is dated, yeah, December 12th, 2022.
Oh, yeah, I do. I was gonna say, we're talking about old man eyes here, dude.
All right. We just opened it.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Do I keep going?
No, that's
No? Try it, so. All right. So it's really just general conditions. Five is where there's the limit for the 35 dogs. Or the maximum number of dogs.
Do we have an indication of the size of that particular building?
Oh, sorry, what was that?
The overall size of that actual building in comparison to this building,
I don't have that,
Because
I
we're
can
looking
find
at
that easily though.
50 dogs versus 35 dogs.
Yeah. What is the size of this building again?
The building would be 6,000 square feet.
Okay,
Yeah, car wash was 1,000 square feet.
it's,
And it was not the entire building, I don't believe. My client had visited with the operators, you know, when they just started out. I believe we have something that shows the, what was with that application.
If I may,
But
Um,
there, I'm sorry.
if I can interject real quick, when it comes to how many dogs in a building, there's no real set standard. The state like has not laid down, you know, this is what we have to follow. So there's just sort of a, I guess best way, best practices is what we put in there. For large animals, large dogs, it's 100 square feet for them. And then to smaller dogs, it obviously gets smaller. So if you're looking at 6,000 square feet, that leaves her another 1,000 square feet for everything else that she has. But I don't expect her to have 50 large dogs, obviously, but just so you know, that's sort of what we go by for guidelines.
Thank you.
May I ask who this is? That's,
Oh, sorry, this is Patrick with Animal Control.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll open the public in just a little bit here.
I do have some, but they're, you know, small pipes. I don't know if you could, yeah, tell.
that's
I don't know. That's what was submitted with the prior application down at 17 of May.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, some are bigger, so if you get past that first one, but. It's significantly smaller than what, you know, my client has. I mean, the outdoor pen is for 10 dogs, you know, the outdoor pen is 1,800 square feet. So it's plenty of room for. I think the guideline for kennels, as the animal, as Patrick has stated. my client has always been told is that you should have roughly 70 square feet for a large dog. So if you have 10, large dogs, you'd be looking at a 700 square foot pen. And ours is gonna be significantly bigger to allow for,
Yeah, when we look at these, we have to consider maximum use of.
Yeah, but again, that 1,800 square feet, maximum use is going to be 10. We're not going to put any more there.
The rough area of this building, according to these floor plans that were submitted, is 3,500 square feet. Yeah, I don't know, do you mind if I pass this around? If anybody's interested?
By all means.
If you don't mind, we continue with a couple questions. You guys okay with that?
Yeah, of course.
The fencing on your pen, what was the height of the fencing gonna be? I know you said it was gonna be the white vinyl fencing.
6 feet, consistent with what is around the property.
Okay. Because we just went through the sound of the project you guys heard. Fencing. Yeah, the 306 Maple Street.
Yeah, that was a ball.
But this is 2 sets of fence.
They're not soundable.
Not something. Before I open to the public.
I don't have any more questions, no.
No question from me.
I don't think so.
So
Hi, you guys.
I know it's coming.
last, huh?
Yeah.
So the trees in the back will be maintained.
Oh, absolutely. We're not touching anything.
Okay.
I think if you look at our plan, I think it looks like there's a proposal to put up a couple in the front, for landscaping purposes, but I guess that's really more of a planning board issue. I don't know whether they'll want those or not for sightline purposes and so forth, but no, not addressing any or doing anything with the back of the block.
So the tension, I suppose, is you release a number of dogs to go outside. The smaller that number gets, the longer I think that the dogs will remain outside because you have to cycle the dogs through, as opposed to if you let 25 out all at once, you can let them come out and come back in. But if you're letting 10 dogs at a increment, you want to give them a fixed period of time of being outside, you're extending the time dogs are actually outside.
I understand what you're saying, but if you were to increase the number of dogs to decrease the amount of time, the more dogs out just increases the potential for, potential bad interactions, I guess. And so that's what I think everyone wants to minimize. And what we have is a maximum of 50 dogs. And at 10 a time, so that's 5 groups that would be brought out, in the morning and then maybe again in the afternoon. Because my client had kind of put together like a typical day. So, just to run through it with you, it's like 6:30 to 8:30 would be, getting the dogs checked in, getting them placed in their respective play groups based on size and temperament and which dogs get along well and so forth. 8:30 to 11:30 would be, getting them a little bit of exercise, playing some games, fetch, whatever it is, getting, out in the outdoor pen. Coming back in around 11:30, rest time, in the building, putting them into pens that are inside the building. Usually broken down into smaller groups, getting them some food, some snacks and so forth. 12 to 1, there are no pickups or no drop-offs at all during that period of time. And again, this was not something that was in the application, but I'm just reading what their typical day is. I could, prepare this or give this to you if you would like. And then from 1 to 4, again, some play groups, who are just, a slower pace of play and bringing the various groups outside again. And then 4 to 6 would be 4 o'clock or 4:30 at the latest, bringing the dogs back in, winding them down for the day, getting them ready for, their owners to pick them up. But if you, I have 2, so I don't know.
That is only one aspect of the planned operation. Because the second aspect of the operation, and I don't believe you need a permit for this, would be the grooming business.
Correct, the grooming does not require
Does not
anything.
require a special permit, but that activity shall be going on in conjunction with this activity.
Yeah, and, well, so my clients currently have a grooming business and it's, they're doing well and that's why it's currently a mobile business and, they need a fixed location. They feel that will, do well for them and their clients. And so what they find is people come in or make their appointments for their pet to be groomed. And, right now, they drop them off and they have clients that, go to Barnes and Noble and Starbucks. They have clients that go shopping at Market Basket or the other plazas. They have clients that go and, go to Regal Cinema and watch a movie, and, just to have their dog have some playtime with other dogs. And so a lot of these may not be there for the entire day even. But, there's never, going to be more than the 50 max, but a good grooming from what my client tells me, it takes, at least an hour or 2, if you're gonna do it properly and well. Usually involves bathing them, everything, nails. Sounds like a spa, quite frankly, to me, but, so it involves both aspects to this, the doggy, like the daycare aspect. There will be some that are basically just dropped off in the morning and picked up in the afternoon, people who, are working or something.
And I,
But a number of them are gonna be partial day ones.
and again, full well knowing that we do not need to make a decision based on the grooming, because that's not fun of us, but keeping in mind that that activity is still going on. While the daycare is there.
So
What else, Brian?
So all in, I think that's 6 hours a day of dogs potentially being outside.
Right.
If I 8:30 to 11:30 and 1 to 4, I did the math right, that would be
Yeah.
6 hours.
6 hours, yep.
So I understand that the town has enforcement capabilities and things like that, but practically speaking, how does that play out? Because our noise bylaws speak of sustained tones. And this will be blips, which, barks that don't necessarily fit within that enforcement parameter. And they're not gonna sit out there with whatever that instrument is,
Understood.
so the town really doesn't have enforcement, because if we had to go to court and say, what's your proof of some violation? The court's gonna say, I don't have it. So the town's gonna say, we don't have it. We've heard some barking. It seems excessive to us. And the judge is gonna say, take a hike.
Hey, Brian, let me ask you a question. There is no enforcement of a noise bylaw during the hours of 7 AM to 9 PM.
Well, there is. Technically, if you.
Exceed a certain
if
level,
you
yeah.
see, on a sustained basis, there.
But that's also based on the zone of the property, too,
Whether it's commercial or residential.
Right.
commercial, residential.
Exactly. My point is, that doesn't really apply here. And there is no real means of enforcing anything. We could have Tim go there and say, hey, cut it out. And the animal control officer, hey, you gotta cut it out. But the actual when the rubber meets the road, town doesn't got nothing, really, right? So I struggle with the sound and then the town's recourse if there is a problem. And 6 hours seems a little bit excessive, considering the homes are so close.
Well, again, I'd like to point out, it's the closest one's 236. The majority of them, are successively further and further away.
Yeah.
You're gonna be limited to 10 dogs out at a time, supervised. This isn't just, let them out and see what they do. I remember, the last meeting, Brian, you were like, my neighbor has a dog, and when that dog barks, it goes right through my, right through my head. Well, the owner isn't usually right there to like, get it to stop or do something. If a dog starts barking and, they're gonna be bringing that dog right back in. And there's gonna be someone there to intervene right away. Can I say there will never be a bark? As Patrick stated, he was down at Camp Bow Wow, which has many more dogs outside playing around. And he could barely hear anything. He heard one faint bark. I know that the abutters have said, and because they said it during the last meeting, dogs will be dogs, that is true. But are you going to prevent a business from operating in a properly zoned area because of like a random bark? Like, 2 or 3, maybe an hour?
But the answer to that is no, right? But what if, there is some sort of nuisance factor? What recourse does the town have? Practically. I'll give you a hint.
Abutters could complain to the inspectional services, and I guess, Tim or anyone else could go down and do a spot inspection and, or, just sit outside on the, the side, the entranceway for the condominiums on the other side of the fence without telling my clients, and listen for a period of time to see what, may be happening and maybe doing it.
Gonna sit there all day?
Not all day, like I said, you got between 8:30 and 11:30, you're gonna have dogs outside pretty much, during that period of time.
Right,
So
so
you don't sit there for the whole 6 hours, but, I would think that if there's a problem, you'll know if you sit there for 30
let's say
minutes.
there's a problem. What can the town do?
No, I don't think the town could do any more than they can if it's your next door neighbor with the dogs out back.
Exactly, that's my point.
There is no, we hear it all the time, and unless it's within those hours. Dogs back, I mean.
Right, but now we're clustering animals and we're creating, we're not creating, but.
I think Brian brings up a very good point.
So we get,
We're creating an opportunity, I'm not saying there will be, but there's an opportunity for the potential of a nuisance. That the town, other than being a little heavy with inspectional services, I don't think if push comes to shove, they can't find you, we can't find the business operator. I don't think they're allowed to, right? I don't think they can pull the kennel permit, right?
no, because
And that would be a Tim Icardi question.
I don't, if it's noise within a certain, I mean, just to get to that level, the noise would have to be proven to be above whatever the DBA
Right.
sound is
70 decibels.
for that
Right.
zone line
Exactly.
over a certain period of time.
Right, and that is impossible, I think, practically speaking, to do. And the nuisance is not gonna be 70 decibels, it's gonna
Okay, but-
be 55 decibels of barking for hours, and it drives the neighbors crazy.
So, and I'm just gonna play devil's advocate here, because we both sit on 2 different boards. We have allowed trucking companies to come in up against residential properties with trucks in and out, in and out, in and out all day. Saying, well, you can't do that because of the house there. A lot closer to 360 feet. I understand your argument at that point, and I think you know exactly what I mean.
I know, but you advocate the exact opposite point.
But you're also coming up with a scenario, a what if scenario, I guess, which is understandable.
Worst case
because-
scenario, that's.
Worst
what we have.
case.
We have to operate under worst case.
But
scenario.
we have, I guess the statement, from the, you have people in this town who are in jobs, that professionally are doing animal control work. And he stated that he went, from different perspectives around the largest, daycare around here. And he went to like the closest home, the closest business, and then, even right in front.
If he stayed there for 8 hours a day for 2 weeks and listened, that would be a scientifically based study of saying, you know what, I didn't hear anything, but if you go there for a half hour and sit there.
I guess I'd like to ask Patrick how long he's been doing his job in that capacity and how many times he's gotten any kind of complaints. From my understanding, my client has been in contact with most of the people cited, in the opposition's, statements here. And few, if any, complaints from any of them. And they have houses like, 50 feet, 80 feet away.
So I've been full-time since 2020. I started part-time 2018. I've never dealt with a complaint from neighbors about any of the kennels when it comes to noise, anything like that. And as I said, I'm trying to use Camp Bow Wow as the example because the fencing that they have around this property that they're looking at is the same fencing that they have around for the pen for the dogs. The difference here, I guess, is you have Camp Bow Wow that has 3 runs that are available at all time. 20 dogs in each. Having been a pet owner my whole life too, I'd never run into where I walk up to a place going, holy, like it is just very loud, it's barky, it's this. I don't run into it. I run into it on the inside when they're in their kennel because they want out. So that's really where the noise, I guess, really comes from. But I've never received a complaint from any homeowner or business regarding a kennel in our area, Franklin or Bellingham.
And I believe the other animal control officer, I think her name's Tracy. My client inquired of her as well, and she basically said the same thing. I mean, to some extent, you have the applicant who's in this line of work, who, is, putting in conditions that, are going to, take every possible action to minimize what the concerns are. The dogs are not going to be left alone. There's out of 50 dogs, 10 outside at a time. The distance from the properties. Yes, I understand that the homeowners are concerned, but it comes down to, again, this is there's a whole section of their property that's zoned business as well. They drive through a business zoned area, to get access to where their condos are, and they all purchased them, seeing 140, with all of the various, commercial development along it. And, many of them at the time, it actually looks much nicer now than it did back then. I mean, you had Stearns Auto Sales before it became Taylor Rental was just, an eyesore. There were a number of places, the dilapidated house that sat on the property my client owns. And when they brought, tore that down, that was full of asbestos and things that they had to remove were unbelievable. Rats and mice and, so what you've seen, there's the dental office, the cemetery, Mr. Fence, all of it was there. They bought knowing that 140 is a state highway that's commercial on both sides. And again, every single possible business use is allowable there, without ever coming before you. I mean, except for this one, this one, we happen to have to get a special permit from you for the kennel use. And again, I would say it's not really a kennel. We're not doing overnight.
Unfortunately, though, with
I
the
know.
special permit for the daytime boarding,
Yes.
it does open that up and allow it
Absolutely.
without any other
Understood.
requirements to go full
Understood.
overnight kenneling. Now,
Understood.
we could put that in the decision that you'd have to come back if you want to do that.
Oh, I don't think you even have to put it in the decision. I mean, it's, the hours of operation are gonna be in the decision, so that alone keeps us from ever doing it unless we come back. And, like I said, this is what we're here to propose.
And it's not lost on me either that more impact use could go into that property, and there could be much more noise, much more traffic, much more everything. That's not lost on me. I'm just trying to avoid future problems.
I'm gonna just make a statement here, and, so there's a parcel of land just right next door to my office building. It's smaller than the one that we're talking about tonight. It's under agreement, and rumor is that the purchaser wants to build a gas station. So they don't have to come before you.
Gas station wins lot too.
So there's a lot of things that could go there. I mean, and again, there's no weekend hours, there's nothing. Again, I know that's not gonna satisfy, the abutters here, but it's the truth.
Let's, we're still open, like, open. We're at the public. So it goes that way.
Yeah.
I will open it up to the public at this point. I will say though, we are gonna keep it on point. I see a way we can. We're just not gonna seriously repeat the same thing. It's not a value to anyone, so. State your name and address, please, sir. Yeah, you've been.
All right, perfect. So my name is Dan Grosso. I live at 303 Crystal Way. And I just wanted to just question some of not question, but I guess bring to light just the differences of the abutting lots and some of the comps that we're using in the conversations that we're having tonight.
What, man?
I don't think it's, I guess, I'll just start with Camp Bow Wow, right? I mean, that's part of an industrial park off of Forge over there.
It also abuts residential land.
It's heavily wooded at the back, though. I think the pictures that we saw here, you have a row of like 4 or 5 larger trees, right? So I would expect those woods to probably insulate better than they do. I know he was saying that it'll be like 230 something feet away from the nearest house. Yeah, so that'll be what, 0.04 miles, so it'll be less than a tenth of a mile away. I think that's a little bit closer than Camp Bow Wow, with less insulation, I guess, for the residents at that property. So I guess I just wanted to get that out there and make sure everyone was aware of that.
Just so you're aware, the public's aware, that distance between Camp Bow Wow and the residential is about to be gone. The planning board's about to approve a warehouse in between them, so that insulation will be gone.
Okay, well, for the purpose of this conversation, I don't think that's relevant.
Warehouse
but-
would be fairly insulated too, I would think.
Anything else?
I mean, I guess all due respect to Patrick, and I think it just goes back to the point of needing to survey an area for the entire hours of operation for weeks on end. I go by Camp Bow Wow all the time. I'm always on the sidewalks going through the industrial park there. Sometimes I can be almost as far as the Marriott and I can hear dogs barking down the road over there. So I guess it depends on the day, right? And as you're saying, you have to plan for what area. The courtyard, whatever it calls down there.
Camp Bow Wow. Camp Bow Wow's a Maple Street. There is
I
no-
think it's about Happy Tails.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about.
Okay, you had me confused for a minute. I thought maybe we had a new hotel in town we didn't know about.
Well.
Anyone else? Sure.
Yeah, my name is Jason Dickey. I live at 16 Crystal Way. I suspect I might be the 260-foot nearest condo that they're referring to. So my question is, so I think I had heard that you mentioned that 55 decibels is sort of the law in terms of what the level.
I actually, what is the continuous decibel on that particular piece of property? I don't want to answer that question without being factual.
Yeah,
Right.
it'll take me a minute to
All
find.
right, so continue.
Sure, so for sake of argument, we'll say that. So when I was doing some research on this, like an individual dog can exceed that. And we're talking 10 outside. So 10 animals who are each individually capable of exceeding the noise limit, barking in a random, erratic, sharp pattern, like you say, that could still be kind of a nuisance. I'm not really sure what the sound dampening qualities of vinyl really are compared to, say, steel or other things that are like designed expressly to dampen them. I mean, I work from home, so the promise that it's only gonna be from 9 to 6, that doesn't reassure me at all. So, cause I'm there from 9 to 6, so I mean, I could still see 10 dogs, yipping up to 80, 90 decibels a piece and working themselves up. That could be pretty problematic. And I know there's people who are retired and things, so it's not like we're all up in Boston working and we come home and the dogs are gone. That's certainly not true. There's people that would be.
So if you don't mind, because I tend to play devil's advocate with everything. And the research you've done, how does that decibel level drop between two fences in the distance of 236 feet?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not a sound engineer, so that's why I'm bringing it up.
I just-
Yeah, certainly.
You bring it up, I'm gonna ask the question, so.
Can I make a comment?
And when I get to you, ma'am,
What
I'll be
is-
glad to.
No,
No, ma'am, no, we're keeping the meeting civil. Sir,
How am I not being civil?
because
I'm
everything goes to
perfectly
the
willing to
chair.
yield to her. if
This
that-
gentleman has his hand raised too.
Right.
Raise your hand, I'll come back to you.
Okay, I'm perfectly willing to yield to her at this point. She-
Go ahead, ma'am.
Where do you live?
60.
16.
Okay, which is up above.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would just like to make the point that the noise coming out of that area is not going to be soundproofed for you.
Right.
It's going to go right up in the air to your condo. He's right up on the hill behind the yard, so.
Yes.
Only point I wanted to make while he was speaking.
Sir? Yeah, I'll answer. I'm
My
sorry.
name is Marty Roach. I live at 31 Crystal Way. I've lived there for 31 years. A couple of points that Mr. Adler had brought up, and I appreciate you bringing up the interactive GIS map, because I did the same mapping, and from the southeast corner of the fencing to the first condo was 0.03, which is approximately 186 feet. So if you have a 36-foot measurement, I would like to see the engineering plan on that. Also, the unit that Justin just spoke of, Jason, sorry, I can always confuse you with the management company. That is 0.35. So you referenced Camp Bow Wow at 0.18 measurements off of that same map. So when we talk numbers, let's make sure we have accurate, concise numbers. The other points that I would like to bring up is the fact that the grooming business is now part of this building. So at 6,000 square feet, 50 dogs, 100 square feet, at the worst case scenario of 50 large dogs at 100 square feet, that's 5,000 square feet. How much space then is being allocated to grooming, offices, restroom, and such? So do we actually have the appropriate amount in there? The original application was called out for a kennel with possible full-time, 24/7, 7 days a week. Now we're being told, no, it's only Monday through Friday, 6:30 to 8:30. So there's a lot of discrepancies here of what was originally applied for. Now that's being talked about. And a very detailed plan really needs to be ironed out of exactly what this application is for, as opposed to, oh, we're gonna do this, because as was just mentioned, oh, we can revisit this and come back. No. There's 18 residents out of 61 here in opposition of it. And we would definitely be in opposition moving forward. So any language by this board for a business that's now saying, well, it's just gonna be a daycare. Well, now it's a daycare and a grooming.
Believe it was all along, and I'm gonna ask.
I
you
don't
all
believe it
to-
was in the proper official application saying all this.
And we'll check.
Yeah.
Because
Okay,
I-
so
I-
those are, that's just the start of some of my points. Mr. Adler also made mention of the dilapidated house. Well, it actually was not a dilapidated house when the units were built down off of South Crystal Springs. the gentleman was actually living in the property, and that's why the stockade fence is up, is because that was part of the approval process from the planning board, that fence had to be installed by the developer for that gentleman in order to get that special permit put through. So it was not a total derelict property before these people bought it. You're also talking about 50 cars in and out of that resident time frame all day. So if you're doing grooming at an hour to 2 per, you're still talking 35 full-time residents in the daycare. So, and at 10 dogs outside at any given point in time, someone's doing grooming, so there's gonna be 3 employees in the building at all times. Because somebody's gotta be grooming, somebody's gotta be watching the dogs, and then somebody's gotta be handling people coming in and out of the building. So there's a lot of discrepancies of what I'm hearing here that need very clear definitions of what is being proposed, the hours of operation, and how it's gonna be handled.
Hold on, mister. What is the initial application, sir?
So in the application, the proposed activity is grooming facility for dogs and cats, daycare for dogs, and potential short/long-term kenneling for dogs. The hours of operation proposed in this application was 6:30 AM to 6 PM, Monday through Friday. And there's a clause in here that says overnight kenneling is a service that we would like to offer at some point in the future. It is anticipated this service would not be available until 2026 at the earliest. If commenced, it would require a staff member to be on site 24/7 while pet is in our care. So it sounds like, based on what you're discussing tonight, that, you know, you're not asking for the 24/7 boarding or overnight kenneling. And that would be, if this were to be approved, that would be conditioned in the approval, so it would be just out of the question, as you mentioned. I
That
think-
was discussed by my client, you know, when we were doing the application, before we even came for our first hearing. That was, agreed that we were not pursuing that.
Okay.
And you can see, you know, from our application, I don't think there's a discrepancy at all. It says Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 6. So, you know, obviously it doesn't involve any overnight kenneling or kenneling on weekends because there's no hours of operation for that. I think everyone on.
Gotta be careful with our wording, because I do it myself all the time.
Yeah.
Hours of operations are 6:30.
Yes, 6:30.
You just said 8:30, that's all.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
that's how people
I'm sorry.
get, people
Yeah.
get off and changes.
I'm sorry, 6:30 is 6. And I think, you know, general public, you know, don't understand the processes as well as, you know, the board members do and attorneys. If there was any point ever that, my client wanted to pursue or tried to pursue kenneling, it would require this entire process to be done from, you know, right from the beginning again. Notices, public, you know, postings, you know, public hearings, the whole bit,
Okay, so
obviously. So there's no, it wouldn't
Before we-
slide through.
Before we go any
and-
further, you're in agreement that if this was go forward, we could take that totally out of the decision, put that right in. Because your application does
Yep.
state that.
No, it said
So
it's
as long as you're
potential in the
comfortable with
future,
that.
but off the table, yes.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I just have 2 points that I really want to point out in the.
Do you have your name and address for the record, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Susan Epicella, 603 Crystal Lane. You know, there's a lot of conversation, obviously, about if the dogs are outside and they're noisy, they're going to be brought in. I read that in the initial proposal, as we all did. They won't be allowed to stay out, blah, blah, blah. This whole school year, I brought my granddaughter to gymnastics over in Hopedale, and there's a doggy daycare next to it. She was there for an hour, and I would walk or be outside. The dogs were barking excessively, and they were not outside. They were inside, and you could hear them as loud as could be. So, and I kept thinking, who the heck would even want a business next to this? They were not outside, they were inside. So I would just like to also keep in mind the conversation of not just talking about the dogs that are outside, but the dogs that are inside. And Patrick said, if they're brought inside because they're barking, they're gonna be a little agitated. So then they're gonna bark probably even more. Then we have concern on our street that, yes, we moved into this beautiful place that was allowed to have dogs, and many of the residents do. We don't, but many of them do. They keep their dogs under control on our street. All the dogs get along well. What are these barking dogs outside and inside gonna do to our resident dogs and dogs on the street? So that's my main point. The only other thing I just want to point out, and it's just a simple thing that has nothing to do with this, but I just wanted to let this attorney know that none of us went to Shadia and complained and fed her. I know Shadia because she lived on the street. I bought my son's bridal, mother of the bride dress there years ago. She moved out. I haven't seen her in a long time, but now my daughter's getting married. So I went in and we were just chatting and happy to see each other. And I just said to her, hey, did you hear about this? And she said, no. That's all I said. I just was telling her. And she said, if I still lived on that street, I would never want that to happen. Where do I go, Susan? What do I do? I said, well, you allowed to put in a form and that was it. So nobody fed Shadia. And I just want to make that clear because I respect her so much. But again, I think we need to talk about the outdoor noise and the indoor noise, along with all the traffic.
Yes, ma'am.
Pam Luther, 401 Crystal Way, and I left Shadia's condo when she sold and moved out. And yes, I'm concerned about the barking and the noise, but I'm more concerned that maybe disappointed is the right word, that since I moved there in 2018, all of these commercial businesses have sprung up along the street that weren't there before. The gun store, the pool store, Taylor Rental, the Land Rover place. They weren't there when I bought the condo. And I'm concerned that pretty soon we're gonna be living in an industrial park. And I'm,
Ma'am, and you know what? I feel you and I 1000% agree with you. And the only way to make those changes is a town meeting. Town meetings with, these properties are zoned and they're by right uses. This attorney could come in with absolutely anything else and not have to be in front of this board. It's zoned that way, and only way to make these changes is town meeting. Property is zoned that way, I hands the tie. To certain extents.
I understand, but my other major concern is the traffic because I come in and out to work. And sometimes I sit there, and especially during major commuter hours, the traffic is horrible in that stretch, okay? So that is my second concern. The noise, not so much, but the disappointment in all the commercial establishments that have popped up and the traffic.
I 1000% agree with you on that. That's what got me involved with this board, to be very honest with you. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Tammy McGee. I live at 101 Crystal Way, which is extremely close to the property that's wanting to go in. And I just want to say just to the applicants, we in no way, I think, I'll speak for myself, but I don't think anybody else here wants to squash anybody's dreams or growth of business.
Yes.
We're just, again, extremely concerned about our solitude and peace of mind. And, you know, everybody wants to be in their home to have tranquility and peace and, you know, have a nice place to live.
But again,
So that's
I'm gonna interrupt you, I'm sorry,
that's where we're coming from.
because
I'm getting to my
we're
point.
zoned there.
I
So
understand.
town meetings will change zoning.
Yes, I understand that, sir. And I think that the other businesses there that are being talked about don't really produce any noise. There's no noise being produced that dogs are gonna produce. So I think that's the difference in why we're all sitting here tonight. The other point that I want to make is that the trees that are being talked about, again, are in full bloom right now, but that's only for a couple of months. My unit is the closest to that unit on the lower side. I look directly into that lot for more than 6 months out of the year when the leaves are not blocking it. So I can look directly into that lot. My dog sees directly into that lot. We can see directly into that lot. So I just want to make that point that those trees aren't a sound barrier or a visual barrier for the whole year. So I think that maybe, that sound barrier that everybody keeps talking about, or the applicants, the lawyer keeps talking about, really isn't there. So that's the major point I wanted to make. And if this was truly just an inside grooming facility, I also don't think there'd be this much opposition. It's really that doggy
If
daycare.
it was this type of, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
If it was 7-Eleven, we wouldn't be here.
Right, right.
That-
Yeah, my name's Allison Moran, I'm in unit 203, Crystal Lake. And, I want to make a couple points. One of, the 61 units that we have, there are several that have dogs, but I think there's only one that keeps their dog outside. And everybody knows that dog, the little yappy dog. And I apologize to the owners here, the owner. But, so, yes, they all are kept quiet, and if there are a bunch, 10 other dogs there, I don't see how one person can possibly keep 10 dogs from barking. And I don't see if they go, if complaints are put in about the dogs barking, there will be any repercussions. So, and then the second point is that we have a lot of us that are at home during the day, including myself. I work at home. My job requires a lot of concentration. There are other people who are retired. There are other people who nurse at night and have to sleep during the day. So I could call on, if we want to have a raise of hands, how many people here are home during the day?
Part of it.
Thank you.
Someone else had their hand raised, I'm losing it, yeah. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, I would just like to echo, what Mr. Salisbury had, his sentiment regarding the fact that we really don't have any recourse. If we have complaints, and there is no real guarantee, it doesn't sound like. Who's monitoring? Where's the oversight? It's really concerning.
And you know what, you are correct, Mrs. Salisbury was correct too, and again, if it wasn't a doggy boarding kennel, if it was an auto repair or a Dunkin' Donuts, the noise generated by that, there would be no, that would just be by right, it would just go in.
But it is a dog kennel. So please, don't, I know you're making light of it, no, well,
I'm not
we can put a
making light of it,
7-Eleven,
sir.
but in fact, we're talking about a specific license at hand.
Mhm.
And one of the other mentions you brought up about the planning board, town meeting and the select board and the property I'm gonna bring up on 126 on Hartford Ave, the 3 houses that Mia owns. And I believe that's what you're referencing of why you got on the board.
No, I'm not.
Oh,
That
okay,
wasn't
well,
that.
I took a guess.
Been on the board a lot longer than that, go ahead.
But, in those applications up there and how that land can now be developed has very specific. And I believe the zoning board helped initiate
No.
all of, nobody,
No.
the recommendation, when we were at the
board-
town meeting, it was said the zoning board,
The zoning board forces zoning. We do not write zoning for the town.
Okay.
We are here
in
as.
the town
here
meeting,
as
the
appeal
zoning
process.
board was
It was a
referenced
special
several
subcommittee.
It was a
times.
special subcommittee, it was not this board.
Yeah, just to clarify, are you referring to the zone change that occurred a few years ago? There was,
Last year at the town meeting.
No,
it might have been,
2 years ago.
I think it was 2 years ago, but
So
there was,
even 2 years ago,
Yeah.
it was still, it put very much restrictions on B1 properties of what could and could not go in those properties because it was directly abutting residential property, which this is.
so that wasn't a B1 zone though. This is
That was an overlay.
that was an overlay. That was a little bit different. So. Yeah.
Again, I went to the town meeting and there was several references above the zoning board. Exactly who said what and how, I'm not
But
positive.
just for point of reference, as a board, we do not set zoning. Our job is for an applicant or homeowner, actually for the applicant to come in when they want to appeal or need a special permit based on existing zoning. We can't control what that property is zoned. It's the residents.
Zone would, so I understand that.
The residents make that change. I'll be ready to close this down if you're okay.
What can I just add?
One more, then we're gonna.
Well, you had mentioned if I knew how the sound would Doppler, and of course I don't, but it occurred to me, based on your question, we can test that. You know, well, you can put something in that space that of equivalent noise, like say a police cruiser with its siren going, and we can. Well, you know, you can come to our units and space yourself around the different units, and you can listen to how a sound of about that depth and sharpness might carry through the complex. And then you may have more of a factual basis for knowing how that sound like could affect us.
The fire engines.
Yep. Yeah,
I'm okay to close. Can I get a motion to close?
Motion to close?
No,
Motion to close.
I don't, unless there's.
that's really not fair.
Actually, it is. Is there a comment you have beyond what's already been said tonight?
Yes,
Please.
Christine Spiller, 602 Crystal Way. This will greatly affect the value and the ability to resell our condos. I know that a lot of people here have spoken to a lot of people, friends, family. Nobody would be interested, or very few people would be interested in buying a home with a doggy daycare that is emitting dogs barking. We'll call it 5 days a week, 6 hours a day from the facility. That is going to be a turnoff. It's going, if people are desperate to sell, they're going to drop their price to sell. So we've been talking about noise, and noise is absolutely a factor. I will say, all of those businesses that are near us, I don't hear any noise coming from them personally. I don't hear drills. I don't hear beef frying at jobs. I don't hear any noise coming from them.
No.
This place is going to emit a lot of noise at least 5 days a week. That's going to affect our right to have a peaceful place to reside.
And I can only say to you, because I've lived through it, and I know a lot of us have, is we personally own property right up against industrial property. And warehouses are being built right next to homes, a couple 100 feet, and it's unfortunate aspect of the zoning in this town. The zoning in this town needs to be changed. It's
Well,
just,
the fact that there's a permit process that the zoning board has to make a decision on, that's going to affect the lives of a lot of residents on a daily basis. You know, there's a reason why this type of business requires a special permit, and we're all sitting here. What is that reason? Why are we here? We all know why we're here. And dogs aren't just barking when they're unruly. They bark when they're happy. They bark when they're having fun. And I was on vacation the week of July 4th, and I sat outside Camp Bow Wow. Now, I might have been a little closer than J&J Material, but I listened to nothing but dogs barking the whole time that I was there. And some were brought in when they were barking, and some weren't brought in. There's just going to be a lot of dogs barking. That's what they do. And I know I said it a million times at the first meeting. But you can't diminish that. And there's no amount of soundproofing of trees and fences that's going to mitigate that sound from our neighborhood.
you good?
So I would suggest perhaps not closing, you can close the public discussion for tonight's hearing, but
Yeah.
not closing the public hearing.
Why?
Because then we can't take in any other additional information from the applicant or from any of the voters.
I'm sorry, we can't hear.
We were just talking procedurally about what the next step is in terms of
Is it okay to use the mic so we can hear?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll speak up, but
Thank you.
we were just talking about the procedural next steps. So I would suggest not closing there.
So why don't you make that motion?
That we don't have.
Don't have to. Beautiful. Discussion between the board members.
Can I start?
Go right ahead, sir.
So regarding the noise, bylaws, 240-48, I looked it up real quick. I'm actually a noise specialist. So if the receiving zone is within 200 feet of the business or industrial area, it's considered zone B. Yep. And that would have a daytime limit of 55 decibels during the day, and then a nighttime of 50 decibels. You can exceed at any point, anytime, up to 20 decibels over that. So let's say it's daytime, 75 decibels. For more than 10 minutes, you cannot exceed more than 10. So that would be 65 decibels. I know I'm getting very technical. And then,
Do it, dude.
and for 30 minutes continuously, you cannot exceed that limit. So for 30 continuous minutes, you can't exceed 55 decibels. I'm a noise monitoring specialist, so 55 decibels is pretty low. So right now, between Rob and I, it's probably 65 to 70 at this volume, I'm just estimating. As you move away, 200 feet, 230 feet, there's an equation, a log-based equation, but you're gonna reduce the decibels by about 10 decibels. So let's say you have a source of 70 decibels and you move to 130 feet, 36 feet, you're probably gonna go down to 60 decibels. That's without, noise barriers. Noise barriers, in this case, you're gonna have a couple of fences. So I don't know what the rating is for those, but I'd imagine it's gonna be another 5 decibels that's gonna go down.
Can I ask a question? Is the pump station also a noise barrier?
Um,
That building that's in between?
it could be, but I think since it's kind of offset, it's really kind of a direct line of sight.
Actually, it's right behind the outside particular area.
True.
It's directly behind it.
True, it's gonna go through the fence, through the other fence, through the trees, and then it's partially blocking it, it's not fully blocking it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, so it's gonna have a partial effect. But in general, I think that, the Bellingham bylaws are pretty strict about noise. I just don't think it's enforced. Because if it was enforced, I think a lot of businesses would not, would have some problems when they're adjacent to a residential, area. That's what I think, with having trucks or any horns of any sort. I respect the applicant coming here and, I know they take pride in what they're doing and they're doing it right and they came in prepared. They knew exactly what hours they're gonna be running, how to limit noise and how to limit odor. So I completely respect that, but also the showing of the abutters, speaks volumes as well. No pun intended. But it just shows that there's a lot, there's concern that, a few dogs will bark, their dogs will bark, and that can happen over 6 hours a day. So I can, most of us can relate. There's always that one dog in the neighborhood that's just continuously barking, like, please, neighbors, stop it. So it is kind of there's a balance here. It's like, if we want businesses to succeed, you don't know what the next business is going to be. It could be a warehouse. You might think a warehouse is quiet, but those trucks pulling in, those are not quiet at all.
They can be above 60 decibels.
So those are gonna be 65 easy. So the alternate solution is not gonna be that great, might not be that great, or it could be better. But for this, I am pretty much at a, yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, I'm 150 feet to my neighbors with 2 dogs. I got no idea what kind of dogs they are. My wife does that bark and cry all day long.
Right.
And we've been told there's nothing we can do about it. And it's just, they bark and cry. There's 2 of them. The residents come out and play with them, the dogs shut right up. So when they're outside by themselves, they go.
Right.
So we all live in that area. At this point, no, ma'am.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine.
This might be overkill, Rob. But, no, but within the context of a special permit. And then the other applications, sometimes we have a sound study conducted, right? That's peer review. And I don't know if that, again, balancing the equities, if that's warranted here. If there are, I mean, that would give us some context in which to say, 10 dogs ain't gonna bother anybody, or 10 dogs are gonna bother the world.
I feel like it would be a difficult study to conduct to get dogs to bark when you want and have a receptor at that location.
Well, they won't actually. they'll
can do studies.
They'll do an analysis.
Yes, you can use a CADNA software
Right.
to
They'll say,
do
okay, your
estimates
dog is
of what the
allowed.
decibels are going to be at a certain distance. Those are estimates.
Yeah, just to understand what the sound impact actually could be. You could do a pink noise study by putting 65 and 75 decibels at the corner of the fencing, where it's supposed to be. And you can put it. But no, because you people are not bringing up specifics.
But again,
You bring up generalities and you need to talk specific.
we're gonna call to order. We can close the hearing totally. I'm not doing that. We are discussing amongst the board members, and your comments will come through me, the chair. Just the way it's gonna be,
It always has to go through the chair.
okay? What are your thoughts, Rob?
So I think the other issue might be that being a special permit for the use is that a lot of the engineering and actual specifics that could be used for noise mitigation don't really come at this stage. It's more for the planning board site plan approval stage is where that kind of comes into play, which is where usually, that's where the sound studies come into play is with the planning board applications. I don't know if the applicant is willing to do a sound study at this point. I think it would more be up to them to do that.
I don't think it's necessarily up to them. It might be helpful for the board to understand. You know what I mean? I don't think that we have to ask. The question is it warranted? And that's another.
Well, I suppose that brings up a question. Will the applicant be required to go to the planning board for this?
This would require a development plan approval. So that would be,
So the planning board could indeed ask them for, or either way, the sound study would be utilized for both boards, for both hearings.
correct.
So maybe something the planning board's gonna require anyway, to your point.
Maybe. I mean, this is not, sound studies are expensive, right? The engines, the analysis, all of that stuff, peer review, it's expensive. And that, it might be overkill to impose that upon the applicant.
And still an estimate. So it's all computer-based estimate. Ultimately, what you can do is put a condition of, perhaps the board can consider putting a condition of after it's running, having a quick noise check. That would be cheaper and more realistic, but
I think we take,
wouldn't give you the.
we take,
Educated, yeah.
yeah, we take those estimates of major developments.
Yeah.
And we live and die by it. You know,
I throw that out just as something to think about. Like I said, it's an expense. And this project may not necessarily justify that expense.
I feel like it might be an overkill for this side of the project.
I have no idea what they cost, so. What do we got, Liz?
You ready for my comment?
I am ready.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna echo what Ray has said. I feel very torn. I am a dog person. I probably have the annoying dog in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
He's actually overweight right now, so he's gotta lose a few pounds. But yes, he's very loud and I can hear him when I walk away down the street. So, I'm very cognizant of that and we try to minimize his annoying behaviors for our neighbors. So, I can really appreciate what the abutters are concerned about in terms of being next to you know, dogs, and I mean, my dog will bark anytime something walks by, whether it's person, another dog, an animal, so I get that part of it. You know, and then there's the zoning bylaw, right? It's zoned for business, you know, we can't really take traffic into, or I personally don't think we can take traffic into consideration because any business would generate traffic there. So I think it probably comes down to how we feel the impact of the noise would be on the abutters. And I mean, when I did go up there and I kind of sat outside of the condos and listened, I mean, you can hear the traffic from 140. So it's not completely quiet, but it was certainly not very noisy when I was there, and I will admit it was a weekend, so I guess probably not the height of traffic on 140, but you could definitely hear it. So I presume you would hear the dogs, even though the natural vegetation would eliminate some of that, but so yeah, I think we're all kind of concerned about this.
With that said, and I'm just gonna ask the applicant, I'm not sure, we've, planning board just dealt with that with for a wall, but is there some type of consideration we can make of doing some type of further sound barrier that would eliminate so many decibels heading out towards the neighborhood? I don't know if that's a different stature of a fence.
Well, I mean, I guess my initial reaction would be, again, to specify that the building's gonna be a completely new construction specifically for this purpose. I'm sure that during the construction period, they're going to do as much as possible to insulate and soundproof, you know, the building to eliminate noise, emanating from it. I've heard that, you know, people have seen other facilities. There aren't too many facilities that were built to be a groomer and doggy daycare. I mean, this is being built for that purpose. The one in Hopedale that was mentioned, or many of these others are, you know, the one in Bellingham, was not built with that in mind. And most of them were not. Some of them are homes. To address the noise issue again, you know, one of the factors here that, you know, I keep coming back to it again is, yes, the trees will at sometimes not have the leaves on them. But you're also talking about the noise going through a 6-foot fence. My clients would, if you wanted an 8-foot fence, I mean, you know, just let us know. We'll make an 8-foot fence for the outdoor pen. You know, you'll also have it being covered, so it's dampening it, you know, leaving that area. It then has to go through whatever escapes goes through another fence. And then through the trees, and then through the, you know, so I can't imagine being able to adequately do some sort of trial or test, but, you know, but, you know, do you want us to explore? I mean, it's a 6-foot solid or 8-foot solid vinyl fence.
The reason why I bring this up is I sat through another meeting that both Rob and Brian sat through on sound barriers on a warehouse going up. So in agendas, and there are different types of materials that can be used for the fencing that deaden the sound more and stop the sound from going through. I mean, we're talking this particular one.
What did you learn? I mean, are there?
Yeah, so
Pass on to us to.
supposedly there's a fence going up that's gonna stop the sound of tractor trailers. I don't know if it's true or not. I'll know once it's built. Because I'm in the bottom. So, your thoughts, because you sat through all that, you with the fencing on that.
Sound walls are incredibly expensive. And,
You're talking about the wall, yeah.
yeah, and they have to be of a certain thickness
Yeah.
and
I
material.
thought it was a fence they were using.
They have a specially constructed material, but it's, and to say, hey, just put that up without knowing.
No, that's what,
Yeah, yeah. And one interesting fact, sound studies person, once told, I forget which board, that it's actually the roots of trees that absorb the sound, not the actual foliage or anything like that. I don't know. experts tell us a lot of things that I don't always agree with, but it's the root system.
Do they get their project approved?
But something perhaps to look into is maybe there is a cheap, not cheap, but a cost-effective way to do an analysis, a modeling of sorts of 10 dogs, 25 dogs. That would help us, would help the neighbors to know what we're getting ourselves into, perhaps. And that's something that maybe we can think about, or you can think about.
Again, there's so many factors, that's what causes me concern.
But I don't think, so I agree, there's a lot of factors.
For instance, and not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, Brian. Elizabeth was talking about how her dog, barks when she walks away or leaves it. Again, that tends to be, from what I understand, I don't have a dog, but that tends to be when they do bark, is when they're left alone, or scenarios like that. And in our scenario, we're not doing that. If we have a person that's going to be out there engaging with them, watching them, helping the dogs interact with one another. So that's generally, as Patrick stated, that's when they don't bark. I mean, and that's the goal. I mean, and again, I don't want to kind of beat a dead horse. You've heard me in the spiel, so.
I guess to me, when I look at the criteria for granting a special permit,
Please.
what I come to is that it says that the proposed use will not have adverse effects which overbalances its beneficial effects in either the neighborhood or the town. So to me, I guess what concerns me is that some of these examples of why do we, these less than ideal examples of where kennels are close proximity to houses, why would we want to kind of create yet another one? I think I mean, I could see we could try to dampen the sound, but to me, the turnout, and I would think that the other thing that comes to mind is that it's a gamble with businesses, but if it were me down that street, I would say only him, when you come to think of what would have worse effects, not a lot comes to mind to me personally. All right, yeah.
Drive-through restaurant, I mean.
And the other businesses, I would agree, on the street do not have. The sound is definitely the big concern. And to me, I don't know, practically speaking, I mean, it seems to me, unless you did something that was pretty substantial, sound deadening, I, would be willing to bet you're gonna have some sort of impact. That's what my concern would be with the sound.
I mean, I'll just be honest, personally, I sat there for quite some time, and I also went up top and I thought about the other industrial or commercial lots in the town, things that have gone up, and I'm like, that's a pretty dim distance. I mean, visually sitting there, that's a good distance compared to other things that have gone through in this town and have stopped in next to residential houses.
Yeah.
That's her.
So yes, so I haven't really said much recently, but I do want to point out that I do own a dog, and so I understand the issues with barking and things like that. But I did do a little bit of due diligence as much as I possibly could. I won't say scientific method or anything like that, but I did the best I could, for a voluntary position. So I actually had to get an app on my phone, to kind of look at the decibels of kind of the environment and things like that. So I started out measuring a video conference that I did, and with that, the average decibels were like 77.8 and with a maximum of 109. Maybe that sums something about my hearing, but that's what I got from the readings. So then I took it out and I actually went during lunchtime to like a Happy Tales. And I measured that, went about 75 feet away, had my lunch and set up my decibel meter on the phone, and from there I got about about 47 average with a 67 max. Now I went into the Happy Tails, and I talked to them and they said there was only about 10 dogs out there, or sorry, there was 20 dogs out there at that time. So double the number that the applicants are talking about. I know you can't, it was for a short time and you never know the types of dogs and.
How far away were you?
I was over 75 feet away. Yeah, I was 75 feet away because from their outdoor fence. And then I went to the lot, the 79 Mechanic Street. And I did kind of the same thing, the ways I spent my lunchtime at that point, at that location. And during I was 75 feet from their fence, so I guess it's even farther away from the fence than I realized at the time, because I think I did have a misconception. And I was getting, from the lunch hour, I was getting 56 average and 65 max, just from the lunchtime traffic in that area. So, I mean, the ambient noise in that area is actually generally pretty high, from, distance away from that road. And so you gotta take that for what it's worth, but, and, I definitely won't say it's scientific method. But it seems like there's a lot of business noise, they say was probably not enforced, but it definitely is higher than the allowed.
I think thing to take from that comment. You need better lunch breaks. Just saying. At this point, I mean, we're still open, but what is the wish of the board? What would you? A recommendation?
Do you want, may I just add something? Mr.
Sure,
Chair?
please.
Just my recommendation to move forward, it sounds like there might be potential for the applicant to maybe seek if there might be some way to potentially mitigate noise, but potentially, but I think that the key thing here is that you're eventually gonna have to decide on some decision. So if you would like, if it's the flavor of the board, I can start drafting a decision, have something set up for the next meeting in August, and we can maybe discuss some of the conditions. On top of that, I can bring Tim Icardi into the loop a little bit to see exactly, because we're talking about some enforcement issues. And I think hearing from the guy that does the enforcements is really going to help out as well and see if there might be some language in here that can give the town a little bit of teeth with the decision potentially. That's what I would recommend to move forward, if that makes sense.
First and foremost,
I would just like, there was one point I wanted to make, I guess I disagreed with or wanted to oppose to some degree was unfortunately yours, Brian.
Yeah.
That, the special permit criteria. I mean, essentially what you have to find is that the proposal doesn't circumvent the current neighborhood character or qualities of the natural environment or derogate from the neighborhood. And I disagree. I mean, this is the only residential really aspect here. I mean, there's a couple of homes on 140, in the area. I don't believe they're here to oppose it. They're right across the street. So they don't seem to be concerned. And, if you look, I know that, Peter had mentioned that, this could be rezoned at the town meeting. This is 140. I mean, this is, business both sides, for a significant method, and it's right in the center of town. There's a reason it's own business, and it has been since like the early 60s. And you can see it by the development that's in place there. So I don't think it derogates from the character of the neighborhood. That is the neighborhood. The outlier is the condominium complex. To some degree. If you go up onto South Main, you now have a exterminator, pest, company right near the properties as well. So it's just, I just disagree with your idea that this does not meet that one.
I think it fits with the street. My concern is about the if there, just balancing that there aren't the potential adverse effects to that neighborhood. Which you're right, was kind of the outlier, but,
All right, so
which is really the noise.
people have been talking about noise and how some of the other places don't generate noise, but, I haven't tested it, but you have a couple of, there's smells. I mean, I'm sure they are emanating from the different areas. You have a Joff's Barbecue, you have Pam's Diner. You have the noise, obviously, from some of the testing that that Mr. Dixon did, the traffic alone, there's, tow trucks and ramp trucks dropping off Land Rovers, there's 18-wheelers dropping off fencing products. I just don't see how this one is all that different, to be honest, and if it sounds like, what Mr. Dixon found is that the 75 feet from what is it, what tails? Happy Tails had a lower decibel level than this ambient street noise that exists right now, so. I don't, that's just the only point I wanted.
I do want to mention that, I believe that more about the frequency than the decibel size. Because, everyone is bothered by dogs versus a loud truck.
Obviously, we've all heard both meetings, so if we do work on that, what is August 1st is our next meeting? I just want to make sure we're gonna have enough people here, because I'll be in Canada.
Yeah, I think I'm out too.
I don't want to hold. I know.
You're traveling too much.
Well, if it rains, I'll be here.
It's jealousy, because it's more than me, yeah.
I might be here if we get thunderstorms and I don't leave, but yeah.
I'm away that week.
I should be here.
Yeah, I can be here.
That's,
You get to check us?
that's enough to make a motion or pass anything or deny anything needs to be done. Okay, so we're gonna leave this with I get a motion for continuance. Ask you to please look into some sound
We will.
of some sort, because obviously we know why we're here. We have residents that are quite concerned about the noise. If there's something that you could bring
We'll
to
see what
us.
we can find out, obviously, weighing cost and.
Yes, I'm aware of it.
things, but,
We have to weigh
understood.
your applicant and
Yeah.
the benefits or deterioration, shall we say? I don't want to use deterioration, but you know what I mean, of the neighbors that have shown up and are right behind you.
We'll see what we can find.
I would need a motion to continue to August 1st.
Motion to continue August 1st.
So move.
Second?
All in favor? Do what you can for us, sir. It'll go a long way.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Because my dog, he's overweight, he's 190 pounds. We thought he was still 165, he got weighed, I'm like, yeah, they're like, he got on a diet, oh my god. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we know my dog, so we're like.
He's gonna run out.
But you want to just take a pause?
Yeah, if you want, yeah, I'll be 2 seconds.
5-minute pause?
5 minutes.
That's the one. Yeah. So does that mean someone out there for watching?
Yeah. I mean, I guess you can watch it.
Well, I just want to say, thank you for what you're considering. And the fact.
It's not very scientific, because you have every different type of knowledge, different type of sizes.
That noise makes sense, but it will affect certain residents. And for me, thank you for your sensitivity and your consideration. I wish I could have. Oh. I agree, but I was waiting. I know that.
Thank you, guys.
Three dogs for guiding.
Thanks, guys, for your time. Thank
You
you.
only like a lot of work, like, 8 years central, say, on the last ones, yeah, like 5 years. She went back to the undergrad and ran out work on other stuff. Basically. And she, but you don't say, one of these, she that was just like, they had like some help. No, never. So.
So I believe we have, I think town council's been on this whole time, I'm sorry.
Yeah, hi, Robin. Sorry to keep you so late.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Wake up, please.
We have one
I'm here.
sixty Maple Street.
Yeah, you just got off for the break.
Yeah, we gotta wait.
Oh, yeah, he'll be back in a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was in 5 minutes.
Sorry, I didn't even know you left the table. Here he comes. All right, we're good.
So. Anyways, like I was saying, we have the public hearing still for 160 Maple Street, I believe it's still an open hearing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Wasn't closed.
I believe I can run this, I just can't vote on this. Or do you want me to step aside altogether?
You can run it, you just can't vote.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're procedurally doing the proper things. Okay, so I need someone to bring me up to speed as to why we're here tonight with this.
Okay, so this is a use variance for, well, actually, the applicant wants to go ahead. I'll let you do the talking.
Sure. That's right.
Yeah,
So this is our continuation of the public hearing. The public hearing was left open, but we did have a thorough airing and discussion of the use variance application at the last meeting. It was continued for purposes of Rob and Attorney Stein to prepare a draft opinion for the board's review. This is a use variance to utilize the existing access way that's currently utilized for the golf course that this board has approved to go to the first solar project, which is parcel 1, and is simply utilizing the same access way to go and access the what is known as the south solar array, parcel 3. So it was the same application, same property, same issue, same terms. We talked about that and went through the application. We went through the legal memorandum and the arguments. And the draft decision was prepared. It was sent to us. We really didn't have any comments other than something minor. Rob went over it with Attorney Stein. I have seen it. The applicant doesn't have any further comments to it. We would ask that you vote to approve it, and then the permitting for this full solar project will be fully complete.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't sit, I usually watch through it, but this is kind of coming into this, so we've got concerns, comments. Heard all of the.
So Rob, I know it's been vetted at many different levels.
correct. Yeah, we've had town council, the applicant's council, and as well as Jim Cuffer actually reviewed it as well.
Can we, out of the Jim side, we have it reviewed properly now?
Anyway,
That's the.
yeah. Jeez.
He abandoned us, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, you're stuck with me now. I know it's terrible. So with that, yes, it's been vetted. There was a little bit of back and forth. I think there was a draft that was sent out in the Dropbox, and the only revisions that occurred with the one that you saw that's here now, which was sent again. The applicant's address had changed. And then previously, chairman was on the vote, but now he's off the vote, and actually, our associate is on, can be a voting member. Congratulations.
It's not the first time.
Yeah, so, that is where we are at with the decision.
Okay, so we're still in a open meeting, correct?
Correct, so recommend closing the
Yeah.
public hearing, and then you can make a motion or.
It's ready. All right, I'll recommend. Close the hearing.
Motion. Second?
So you might want to just
Go
confirm
ahead.
that there's no additional public comment or questions before you close it.
Yeah. Good.
We'll open it up for the public.
Is there anyone in the public, is there any questions or concerns before we close it?
Just so you know, Robin, there's nobody in the room.
Okay. Well, I can see most of the room, but I just wasn't sure if anyone was there or online, so I wanted to be sure.
Yeah,
Thanks, Robin.
Nobody loves us anymore tonight, Robin.
All
That's
right.
I have a motion, I have a second, all's in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
That's so moved.
The only non-substantive question I have, was that, I believe, and I could be wrong, this is, shorter than the other decision.
No,
Not at all?
nope, not at all. This is the same, well, it's not the same, it's drafted.
All right.
Yeah, but the same conditions.
He's 1,000% correct. My name's alphabet, so.
But there's another.
My
person.
name's shorter.
Yeah, all right.
Want to make Brian feel good tonight, that's all.
No, don't do that.
That was my only question, just to make sure that we're covering everything that was covered in the, I have no other comments.
No, I don't have any other comments.
Comments?
Nope.
Right?
And did we reference planning board's requirements as well? Were there any on this one?
There are requirements on their conditions, because there was the comment that I actually made about the emergency access, that's covered in the planning board.
So it's already
decision.
covered, we don't need to really
Correct.
reference it. Okay, that was my only.
Yeah, so I just to keep it simple, like
Okay.
the first one, so.
Other than that, I'm ready to vote.
You guys, I understand a motion to approve as written,
Motion to approve as written.
second it.
Second,
I will back out, so all's in favor,
Aye.
so move.
That's good. Excellent.
Thank you.
So just for the record, that was a unanimous vote?
Correct.
Yes, because I had to
Okay.
abstain, I was not at the last meeting.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you want, then you miss coming here and waiting for 2 hours.
I was thinking a dog and come back next time.
Yeah, there you go.
But
It's a long process.
thank you all, and Brian in particular.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Robin.
So you will talk.
Never know for.
Yes, we do.
Oh, absolutely. I'll get.
Four.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Well, it's already drafted. We get.
Oh, four.
I'll get that on. All right.
Thank
You got my four contacts, so we'll check it. Thanks. Have a good one.
It's a variance we needed, Mike,
Oh, you're saying,
before.
yeah, pretty sure.
Let's do minutes first, and then we'll get into general business. You okay with that?
Yeah, I don't know if if anybody has any general business.
I do.
Okay,
He does.
perfect. Oh, okay. For the.
So- I read the minutes, but I can't tell you if they're any good or not, because I wasn't here.
One thing to note, I actually just noticed this, looking at it, it said on the first page with the continued public hearing, it says 13 High Ridge Road.
I saw that, it wasn't what it was.
I don't,
Cause that's where the
That's an
applicant
address.
lives.
correct,
Yeah.
yeah, so that needs to get.
Changed to
fixed.
79 Mechanic Street.
Correct.
I was, because I actually went back on the agenda, so what was High Ridge Road? And I'm like, I would start with it, I guess.
Good job.
Yeah, my apology, I should have caught that before it went out.
Just a small typo on page 2. Third, I guess it would be the third paragraph.
Sorry, can you speak up? Use the mic. What? I really can't hear you.
Page 2,
Yeah,
third paragraph,
yeah,
maybe like 6 lines down. If there is a sentence that starts, they denial of a use variance.
Ah,
Should just be the. Reading this was very confusing to me. Is this paragraph accurate?
the denial of a use variance would have to have a public health.
I mean, the whole.
Yeah, cause this does make sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we gotta change the they to the,
Yep.
okay,
Yeah, we can do that.
anything else? Can I get a motion to accept the minutes with changes that are proposed? Second, all there,
I,
wonderful.
all right.
General business. I obviously watched, actually I was here. But I forget the planning board meeting, the reorganization. Oh, Lord.
Oh.
Anyways, I know it was discussed at our last meeting, so. I just 1,000%, I have no ego, no nothing as far as my position here. I serve the pleasure of the board. I did ask our vice chairman his interest, because obviously that's the next session.
Sure.
Just for the, I'll let Grace speak
Yeah.
for himself.
I would love to, except I'm expecting a baby in August, so I feel like I just want to make sure that I would give the chairman's position my, full presence. I feel guilty if I can't make it for a few of them. So I'd probably prefer to wait.
You're choosing a baby over.
So I have not yet.
You're supposed to be the first one, right?
Yes.
The first, that's why.
That's why,
So
exactly.
With that said,
You know.
right? It's totally up to the board. We can skip the traditional succession.
Someone else.
Nominate someone else, or I'd be glad to stay in the position. I have no desire or ego to do either, or I serve pleasure of the board, so it's your choices.
So, what I would say is, Liz, you're next on the pecking order, so if you would like to do it.
Be the chairman.
Chairwoman.
Chairperson.
Yeah, I mean, will there be any issues if I need to zoom in sometimes?
I would think this has happened, because it's happened with me.
Yeah,
I can tell you, trying to run the meeting via Zoom,
is not ideal.
not ideal, it's very hard, so the vice chair or someone else who's in the room would need to take it.
Okay,
Because you can't run the meeting, I tried,
yeah.
I
yeah.
honestly tried.
Can't stop people.
Brian was the chair for 40 years. Literally, and I had to step in for a few of them. On Zoom, you did a better job than I did on Zoom.
I don't know. That's kind of the COVID.
I found it
Yeah,
very,
so-
very hard.
Yeah, I don't
Yes,
expect to need to miss a lot, but I will be traveling a little bit more in the fall. That's the
Well,
only thing.
what I would suggest then, if you're interested, is
Okay,
it's just the next man up. That's what I like about the zoning, which next person up. If Ray is not interested, it can't right now, then you stay.
Yeah, I'm okay
And you
staying
be
with
the next
vice.
person up.
yeah, let me look at my schedule and make sure, or I can just agree now and then if I need to zoom in. Greg can set up.
I mean, listen, I've got a bunch of meetings I'm gonna miss too, I'm traveling.
Congratulations.
Thank
Cool.
you. Thank you.
Then,
Okay.
as long as you're good, I will entertain a motion
How's she
for nominating Elizabeth.
It's a long one.
Try,
Bricklette.
to take over as our chair for the next year.
Pending her checking.
Yeah, I'll just agree.
Okay.
I'm thinking like the first. So useful.
All right, so.
No,
I'll second
I'm
that motion.
basically checking off the conferences and they're mostly, like, they're not at the beginning of the months, is what I'm thinking.
I got first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
And I'll go through the procedure of, a motion to keep Ray in the position of vice chair. For the balance of 1 year. Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
My last motion,
Can I go?
a motion to adjourn,
Motion to adjourn.
second? Right, all in favor, we're out of here.
Aye.
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 Then you can be.
All
Then
yours,
we'll be
dear.
chair.
Yes.
It's,
I don't know, it's
Probably
it's
after-
too wild for me, no, I'm just kidding.